have beef with producers already. And it's all because of this couple. We were robbed. We were robbed as the audience. Are we not making television here? Are we not making entertainment? Oh my God, I'm so bad. I'm so mad at production. Welcome back to the Miscellaneous channel where we do miscellaneous things. I'm Zeleny. I typically cover TV, pop culture, internet trends, and other miscellaneous things on this channel, so subscribe if that's your vibe. So we have made it to the 7th season of Love is Blind. Who would have thought, not me, that we would come this far with this little TV show, and it's coming right off the heels of a very successful Love is Blind UK first season, a disastrous Love is Blind Mexico season, currently Love is Blind Habibi is going on, focusing on the region around Dubai and the Middle East, so we are drowning in Love is Blind content. So today I want to break down and chat with y'all about episodes 1 through 6 of Love is Blind Season 7, our DC season. I'm enjoying the season so far, and I think for the first time ever, I kind of feel like the pods were more interesting than the honeymoons in Season 7. The season is kind of lulling more during the honeymoons, and usually I'm a hater of the pods section because everyone's on their best behavior and I can't keep track of who's who, and it's just like not as interesting. But this season had some very interesting pod moments that I'm excited to unpack. So it's kind of interesting, it's kind of different for me this season, but I'm still enjoying it. I think there's couples that I'm rooting for. There has been fun drama or fun messiness. I don't know where it's going and how it's going to end and if there will be any success, but at least there's some hope for some couples. As usual, I want to give the disclaimer, we're talking about real people in an edited reality show. We don't really know them. We're just judging them based on what this TV show is presenting. It's not that serious, it is just TV. And especially this season, I've been thinking more about the edit of it all and how every scene, every shot, every line that someone says, they are showing you that for a reason. I actually went back and rewatched these episodes after I watched them the first time, and I caught all these moments of foreshadowing in the very first moments that we meet people that like come back around later. So let's start with our first couple to get engaged, and that is Taylor and Garrett. Something I found this season is that every couple seems to be very like an archetype of a type of couple, and they're like very distinct in their vibe. For example, to me, Taylor and Garrett are the nerdy corporate power couple. I feel like if they get married, they're gonna have a future full of luxury office Christmas parties where they like bid at the fancy auction for a cruise but then are too busy to ever go on that cruise. I think this couple is really well matched. I think they're both really analytical and kind of serious about their jobs. They have big important jobs. He's a physicist, she's a like in clean energy policy. They're kind of like the people I feel like everyone was picturing when we heard the season was DC. Let me start with Taylor first. She is very like fierce, girl boss, woman in STEM. She's also gorgeous and very stylish. I was like admiring her outfit. There was one where she was wearing like white Converse with like these loose khaki pants and like a collared shirt. It was just very like high fashion nerd, and I was living. The thing about Taylor, I feel like I like her, but with Garrett, she kind of was playing too much a bit with him. Like, she could never give him a serious answer to anything. And I kind of feel like it's probably a defense mechanism. I mean, if she's a corporate power boss lady, she can show no vulnerability probably at her job to like climb the ladder and whatever corporate girlies do. And it kind of made him chase a bit, which turned out okay, but I do worry she's like uses humor as a defense mechanism a little too much to the point where she's a bit closed off. And they did kind of have this moment in the pods where he mentions like she seems really cold or calculated in what she's saying, and she does take that to heart and wants to work on it. And then at the end, when they did their proposal, which kind of like popped out of nowhere for me because it just seemed like a regular date and then it turned into a proposal, she read him like a really earnest letter she wrote and gave him like her family love letters, and She did end up getting there with her vulnerability, but then in the honeymoon, she was also being kind of humorous. And then Garrett, I was kind of concerned about him at first because he kept talking about like how he works so much and how all he wants to do is either work or go spearfishing. And I was just like, where does a partner fit into that? And I was kind of just worried he wouldn't be down to put in the effort. But then when Taylor was kind of playing hard to get, she wasn't giving him a straight answer about like if she wanted to be his girlfriend. He was down for the chase and he got her flowers and asked her officially to be his girlfriend. So far, they just seem like a good match. Like they seem like similar energies. I'm wondering like, are they too similar? That could be something, but so far they're one of the couples I'm rooting for the most and just feel like very well matched. And in the honeymoons, there's not much to them. I mean, I think at the reveal, they were both happy with their looks. I mean, they look very good together. Someone mentioned he looked like a low-budget Chris Evans, and I was definitely thinking that before one of the guys said it at the pool party, the regular man's version of Chris Evans. I do think in the honeymoons they're the only couple that we haven't heard have had sex, but they do seem like attracted to each other. They're both so analytical though, it can be hard to read them, but I'm hopeful for them. I think they have potential and they have a lot less like issues popping up so far that we've seen compared to maybe some of the other couples. Okay, next is another straightforward couple. Garrett and Taylor didn't have any love triangles, and this next couple didn't either in the pods, and that was Tyler and Ashley A. I think this couple is really well matched with each other. Although they are a bit boring, they didn't have love triangles. They were pretty early on a strong connection. This couple's archetype is there are traditional religious faith couple, but I did really appreciate they're like traditional but still not extremist about it or not like toxic about it. He talks about how he believes in cooking and she's just super glad to meet a guy that's into cooking because usually, since she's more traditional, she's more used to men that never cook. I appreciated him being like, this is not 1948, and if we're both working, we should be dividing the household chores and the cooking and all those things. If one person's income can sustain a stay-at-home parent and children involved, like, go them, that's great. And then you can probably divide the chores less evenly to, like, make it a fair division of labor. But if your family requires two incomes, two full-time incomes, then it's only fair the chores are divided evenly. So I really appreciated this couple for, you know, they're religious and they're traditional. They're really into their faith. They like pray before meals and they really bond over this like quickly. But yeah, at the same time, they're fair about it. And also like on her end, she appreciates his vulnerability and he gets emotional in the pods and like outside the pods too, and she's like okay with him showing emotion and still tells him like, oh, you're such a man for that. Some traditional women would be very turned off by a man showing his emotions, but she's not, and I appreciate that on her end. So I feel like they're both kind of like showing a healthy example of being traditional. They just seem very well matched. And I don't see any big red flags with them. I mean, I think they're definitely the couple I think are most likely to say yes at the altar and get married unless, like, something happens in the real world. I mean, there's always that, like, asterisk with every couple of, like, something could happen. Someone could be DMing Sarah Ann on the side, going to, what was that place? The Latchkeys or whatever. You never know how people are off camera, so like that's always the asterisk. But as far as Tyler and Ashley A, everything we've seen on camera, they seem very well matched and very honest, and she makes him feel safe and he makes her feel like protected while also like down for being an active part of his household. She did talk about in the honeymoons like she's been like abstinent lately from sex when dating because she was kind of tired of not building emotional connections, and I understood that to be like, oh, they're not gonna have sex right away in the honeymoons, but then they kept making it seem like Taylor and Garrett were the only couple that hadn't had sex. So I think Tyler and Ashley are good with that. And they're both very happy with each other's looks at the reveal too. Like, they're both each other's type, which is always like a big plus, because I feel like just when it doesn't happen, it's just like they try to force it for so long because there is an emotional connection, but like it never works out at the end. I think he does mention he like used to be really mean and like bad to women, or I don't know if bad to women. I'm not sure what he meant, but he does talk about like in his past, he just wasn't very nice as a partner, a good partner, and now he's ready to settle down. So it's like, can those tendencies come back in any way? But so far, they've been very good. Okay, now you can grab your snack, grab a drink, because now we're getting into the mess. So next is Hannah and Nick D, which is one of our messiest, our most interesting. I mean, people and the pods, both of them are very interesting. There's a lot to talk about there, so buckle up. Nick and Hannah, their archetype, because all of these couples seem to have one, is the cheerleader and the jock relationship, with a Gen Z edge to them. I honestly do think Hannah and Nick are very suited for each other. Like, I think they're similar in ways, and they're both like obnoxious in kind of a Gen Z way. I think they're a good match. Do I think they're a healthy match? No. Do I think they're each other's forever person? No. But they just both have issues, and I think they're gonna learn a lot maybe in this experience and in this relationship. I don't have much hope for where they're headed. Let me start with Nick, Mr. Dorka himself, which I can't believe that's a real name. So Nick had this issue in the pods of overselling himself and his appearance, because he's a very smooth talker. He was at first giving very like Sam Light to me, like from UK. Not quite as obnoxious, not quite as douchey, but kind of like similar energy of just coming in hot and cocky to the pods. At first I was very scared. I was like, no way, he's so terrible. I was concerned for the ladies, especially Hannah, who was falling for it. Later on, I think it gets more nuanced than that, but at first I was definitely like, oh, this is a fuck boy for sure. He did this thing that I feel like is so bold to do in the pods. He seemed to keep really playing up his appearance. He compares himself to Henry Cavill. He says he's more attractive than Travis Kelce. He keeps talking about how he's a football player and works out, and he played professionally, like not in the NFL, but like whatever is beneath the NFL professionally, which I'm not the girl to ask, but he played professionally, and a lot of the girls assume like, ooh, he's super large and hot. And he's a smooth talker, has all this confidence. It's just wild to do that in the pods. I feel like I always think like if I was in the pods, I would undersell myself. I would say I'm a troll, like I'm disgusting. It's much better to be like pleasantly surprised at the reveal than to end up how Nick ended up at his reveal, which was painful. And at first I was like on the same page as all these girls, like, why is he talking about he's a football player? Like, there's no way he played football professionally. He's rather small, and he like has muscles. He's just like very regular looking, like works out like a regular guy in your life would. But he's not even at the level of the low budget Chris Evans that's next to him in the pods, you know? So at first the football thing and the athlete thing wasn't adding up. Nick did mention like his position in football was punter and kicker, and at first like that meant absolutely nothing to me. But then I remembered season 1, Glee. Episode title, Preggers. A young gay boy named Kurt Hummel wants to impress his hypermasculine father, so he joins the school football team. And then what position do they give him but the kicker? The kicker's the smallest guy on the field. They said that on Glee. And clearly none of the girls in the pods were Gleeks because they didn't register what position punter kicker was. And they just assume, oh, he's a football player professionally. He's big and built and blah, blah, blah. But if you had watched Glee, the episode where Kurt dances to single ladies and has a great football kick, they would have known. They would have known that that position is the smallest guy on the field. And once I remembered all that, I realized, like, oh, this makes a lot more sense, actually. There was actually one girl who worked in sports and knew exactly what a punter kicker was, but I think she didn't think to tell all the other girls because she probably takes for granted that she just knows football really well and just assumes people know that. She didn't tell the girlies, and she didn't tell Hannah, and Hannah was disappointed at that reveal. Let's dive into Hannah a bit. She's very Gen Z to me. She's probably the most Gen Z person on Love is Blind I've seen to date. She's very unfiltered, kind of crass, very honest with her feelings, and has like a very like self-deprecating and like just a funny sense of humor. And Hannah to me is very immature. She is the youngest in the whole cast this season at 26 years old, which is not that young, but at the same time, she's dating and around all these people in their 30s. And I think there is a difference, and she definitely has some growing up to do, in my opinion. She has a lot of insecurities, and she has a lot of focus on her body. And for a lot of this pod journey, she was so concerned about how hot Nick was gonna be and how she wouldn't measure up, or maybe he wouldn't like her because she's like slightly thicker. She didn't even think that he might look the way he looks, and maybe she's out of his league, you know? It's just so interesting how she was so caught up in her own insecurities, she didn't even consider, like, what if Nick is not attractive to me? Honestly, she needs to learn from Nick's confidence in the pods and how he sold himself. There's a middle ground there between Hannah's insecurity and Nick's cockiness that is just like a really nice level of confidence. On the rewatch, he did seem like a lot of the times he was talking himself up. It almost had a joking tone, like when he said like the Henry Cavill thing, but it was really hard to pick up on that at first. Maybe he was just like, he just jokes too much, but you don't want to joke like that in the pods. But honestly, like, it is a lesson to all of us to, like, confidence is attractive. The girls, they thought he was being a smooth talker and just assumed he was super hot because of how he was. More like how Sam was. I think Sam is a bigger douche, and from UK. He's a bigger douche because he does kind of have the looks to back it up. He's super tall and like large, and that's what all these girls seem to want. And he's like very like well groomed and manicured. When it's Sam doing it, it's super cocky. And then when it's Nick, he was just joking, but no one knew that because they couldn't see him. So like the jokes didn't seem like jokes anymore. It's so weird. I want like a psychological report on what Love is Blind does to people. It's a really interesting like social experiment, but it's like just like a little TV entertainment version of it, but like we don't get into what's going on in their brains like psychologically deeper, you know. I don't know. Back to Hannah. I mean, I think her age also showed in that like she kind of fell for the worst men in the pods. That was Nick, especially in the pods. Like Nick just seemed like a walking red flag. It ended up kind of being a misleading thing, but she fell for him, and all the girls were telling her like, girl, run, he's bad news. And even she was acknowledging like, oh, he seems like he'll ruin my life. And then she also fell for Leo, which is, we'll get to him in a sec. And she also gets peer pressured by the girls to break up with Nick because he is such a smooth talker. They just assume he's bad news. And she does go and break up with Nick. And then the next day comes back and regrets it completely and realizes she got peer pressured. And Nick is like, what the fuck? You let other people just decide this for you? And Hannah was just like a mess in the pods. Like, she didn't know up from down, as she said many times. And she was just kind of spiraling. She's just obnoxious, but like, it's in a funny way. And I enjoyed her a lot in the season. And she's responsible for making this season entertaining. She would just kind of do whatever felt right in the moment, but then do another thing and just contradict herself. And so when she breaks up with him, that's when Nick felt the most Sam-ish to me, because she was bringing up her concerns about like, oh, you keep talking about appearances and how beautiful you think I am and how I look in a bikini and all these things. And this was her big concern because she was just worried he was thinking she was some Victoria's Secret model, she says. He says like all the right things and says no matter like if you're a worm or whatever. I think they're the ones that have the worm conversation. And he's like saying all the right things, and that gave me flashbacks to Sam because, I don't know, it just did feel like just saying what she would want to hear, and even she feels that he's saying what she wants to hear, and she's like worried about it. I think it was more sincere than it seemed at first. From what we see later, it seems like he's very happy with her appearance, but also Nick is not perfect. Like, that's the thing. Both Hannah and Nick give me like red flag vibes, or orange flag perhaps, for both of them. And I think combine orange and you make red. That's not how it works, I guess, but in my head that's how it works. She's between Nick and Leo for a lot of this time, but there's one point where she finally breaks it to Leo that her and Nick said I love you and they are ready to proceed together, and Leo loses it, throws a tantrum. We'll get to that. Hannah did not like how Leo talked to her, so that was kind of the nail in that coffin. And I don't get, like, Hannah and Leo would not have made any sense together as a couple. Like, I don't know why he was so torn up about it. I like that Hannah had the self-worth to be like, Leo made me cry and yelled at me for choosing Nick, so I hate that. And she was even a girl's girl to Brittany, who her and Brittany were both like dating Leo very seriously in the ponds, and Hannah was totally upfront with her about like, hey, Leo did this and that and said all this to me, and here you go. So like Hannah's honesty is like her biggest strength and biggest weakness. It can be very like refreshing and nice, then it also gets her in trouble. So once we get to the reveal, here's where her honesty got the best of her, because she looked disappointed the whole time. She tried to like play it off, but like she looks confused and shocked and not into Nick at all. She literally says like, oh, worst case scenario, he's tiny. And then he walks out and is tiny. That's her worst case scenario. Remember in the pods there was that random guy, who knows his name, that random guy said when he told her he was 5'8", she cut him off. It seems like height is really important to her. I think these people value height a lot. I just really can't relate to that struggle like at all. So like I don't understand it because I'm like 5'2", 5'3", and like no one is shorter than me really. I don't care that much, but like I don't know. If I was a tall woman, maybe I would feel different. For her, height is the epitome of importance, and she is disappointed with Nick. It's so sad. The tables really turned, and that was the name of one of the episodes, The Tables Turned, and it was not about this couple, but the tables turned on this couple because post-reveal, like, he toned down a lot. I think once you see him and hear him, the jokingness of, like, how he talks himself up is more clear, maybe. But he's still, like, obnoxious. Don't get me wrong. And he's Gen Z. He's the youngest guy in the group. He's 28. So I feel like, that's why I feel like they're well-matched. They just are not well-matched. And she kind of tries to blame, like, her being disappointed on, like, oh, sometimes guys feel emasculated by being smaller than the woman. She's like, it's not a me thing. It's like, guys might feel emasculated. And it's like, girl, in this moment, it's a you thing. Like, you're the one that has a huge problem right now. Like, they still kiss and compliment each other and all those things. And she wears the right kind of red lipstick because they kiss and it doesn't transfer. So I don't know if that lipstick has made it over to the UK, but it exists. So then in the honeymoons, things get rocky for Hannah and Nikki D because of the duck thing. Duckgate, if you will. Do I think he's obnoxious? Yes. Do I think he's obnoxious because of the duck thing? No. It's definitely blown out of proportion, and I think Hannah's just like, looking for a reason to justify why she's not that into him. There was a lot of talk about ick this season and getting the ick, and they have this moment, in the honeymoon where there's these like duck statue things, and Nick just really wants to ride one, and she warns him like, that'll give me the ick if you do that. And him, being the goofy guy that he is, goes and does it. But then this like older woman joins him, and they're like laughing it off, and they race, and she starts getting really mad about it. And like, I don't know. She's just looking for a reason, right? Like, to hate on him. She blows this like really out of proportion, and the old lady teases her like, oh, she's jealous, haha. Nick just laughs it off and comes back, and she's like pissed about this, and this leads her to like write a 10 things I hate about you bullet point list that he happens to find in their room, which I'm like, girl, did you leave it out on purpose? It's giving playing games. And again, the immaturity just jumps out with Hannah. I don't know when, we didn't see when he found it. He just talked about it with the boys. And then they go through this bullet point list after this pool party. They're just on very different pages about this. Like, I don't get it. It's kind of like a list of her concerns. It's not actually like formatted like the 10 things I hate about you letter thing. It's like bullet points of like her concerns about him, and they're just like adjectives. But the last word on the list is Delulu. I'm assuming because of how he sold himself in the pods versus how he looks in real life. That's where the Delulu allegations might be coming from. Fair enough. But he's very offended by that, of course. And she plays it off. I don't know. I think she's just very honest and very like, is not into him, and is trying to like find like a logical reason why she's not into him, or like give him a good reason. And she's trying to make it work. And he's just there, and he's just kind of goofy and obnoxious too. And so the thing about Nick too that's weird to me is that he's like being weird about the cameras and what he tells the cameras. When they get to the honeymoon, he makes this like little agreement with her of like, if the producers ask us in the morning like what happened last night, like, I'm keeping that between us. And like, I get it, but also he mentions it's because he has like a brand to protect back home and whatever. I'm just like, who do you think you are? Like, this is how social media has brought in our brains, thinking we all are a brand. Because who is he to be like worried about his brand, you know? And also like, since when do men have to worry about like them getting laid hurting their brand, you know? Just keeping it real. And she like agrees with him, but later is unfiltered with the girls and says like, yeah, we have had sex, whatever. He doesn't want me to talk about it though. So that's just weird to me about Nick, and that's where my feelings on him being obnoxious are. Also, he like made this agreement with her about the sex thing, but then at the pool party he keeps being like, we haven't had sex, right? Wink, 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 wink. It's like, are you being secretive or not? Because I'm curious to see if we're gonna see more about like this brand he's protecting back home, you know? He has his obnoxious and immature parts to him as well, and Hannah has her shit, and just them together are just like an immature tornado. I'm really excited to see their journey just because they're messy and funny and how messy they are. I don't have much hope for them as a couple, but I do think their energies match in ways that make sense. But I have my popcorn ready for like the train wreck here. I think it's gonna be like a good learning experience for both of them. Okay, next let's talk about Leo and Brittany, because we touched on Leo, but I didn't want to dive deep because then I would get into the Leo rabbit hole. I have beef with producers already, and it's all because of this couple. Production betrayed us as the audience because they invested so much screen time into this couple, made me so invested in what the hell was gonna happen, and then pull the rug out right under us. The archetype for this couple is they are the sugar daddy, sugar baby relationship. I love to see it. Oh my god, I'm so bad. I'm so mad at production. How can they do this to me? I need to calm down. I need some air. I need to calm down. Whew. Leo and Brittany, Leo and Brittany. Oh my god, okay. We were robbed. We were robbed as the audience. Leo is quite the character this season. In the pods, he was like insane. He's so dangerous and manipulative. It's wild because like at the very beginning, I thought Nick was like the dangerous one. And then as time went on in the pods, it was just like Nick became so much less dangerous and Leo just like whoop. First of all, he's such a love bomber. It's scary. He like showers his dates in compliments. So he was torn between Hannah and Brittany the whole time. But he just like would compliment them to death. And it just became so like disingenuous. Like clearly just a tactic to get whatever he wanted in the moment. And like the drama with Leo. The drama! Leo voice. He was just so fucking dramatic about it all. It was just so like shut up, who cares? And the worst thing about him is he has no idea how he's coming off. Like, self-awareness is 0 with Leo. Like, he thinks he's like the most interesting person in the world, the most special person in the world, the smartest person, the coolest. Like, you can just tell he like believes this to his core. And he is just like not. Because in case you hadn't heard, he's an art dealer. In case you missed that. Are we all in agreement that's just code for like legal money laundering? That's what I thought, but whatever. What happened to quiet luxury? Stealth is wealth, or whatever the hell the trend was. Like, Leo did not subscribe to the quiet luxury trend. And that makes me concerned too about like, you know, real rich people. I feel like they move in silence. And the stupidest thing too is like he's tired of women judging him for his wealth, or like, sorry, being after him for his wealth. And yet he talks about it to anyone with ears. You know what would have been an interesting experiment is if you didn't tell anyone you were rich and see if you make a connection, and then that's just a nice bonus for whoever you end up with. And that'd actually be an interesting experiment if someone went in like that, trying to just not say it. I mean, I think Benaya in UK was kind of that vibe. Like, he never mentioned it, but I think he was in the end. Really loaded. That seemed like a really simple way to weed out anyone after him for money. But he didn't. He told everybody. Brittany, who is a self-described aspiring trophy wife, sure did perk up when she heard that he had money. At that point, it seemed like a match made in heaven. Like, you see the moment where the light bulb goes off and he's like talking about all this trauma and she's just like, did someone say generational wealth over there? She starts plotting and scheming, and after that point, she's like all in on him. And I thought it was so funny. And I mean, I love Brittany being there. Like, she's hilarious. Like, I love me a good self-aware sugar baby. And I feel like I can already see her being an evil, cunty mother-in-law in like 30 years. She just wants a guy to pay for her beauty procedures and her workout classes, which like reformer Pilates is for the top 1%. Her and Leo seem like a good match, except he's a tool that is awful. So it's like, I don't know. And she says she's dated athletes, she's dated rock stars. She seems to just be in this sugar baby kind of lifestyle. I'm not sure what she was looking for here. I mean, an influencer career probably wouldn't hurt, but she found someone that seemed like a pretty good match at first. It was unfortunate he was just torn between her and Hannah, who could not be more opposite to Brittany. Like, Brittany is super like ladylike, basic girl, wants to be taken care of, and then Hannah is over here being super honest and unfiltered and doesn't even know what an art dealer means. But Brittany was not gonna give up on Leo's wallet, and she sticks by him even though he drags on this love triangle like so far into the pods that it's like, I don't know if I've seen someone on Love is Blind like drag it on that much, and just like tells each of the girls like, you're my number one and you're both my number one, which this is bugging me in all of reality TV across the board, because it's not just on Love is Blind but on Survivor. They're always like, oh, he's my number one, and she's my number one, and he's my number one. That's not how the number one works. There's one number one. Like, it's pissing me off, and it's happening in multiple shows I'm watching, and I'm like, you can't have two number ones. That's not how the math works. Anyway, who cares? They're both his number one, allegedly. And oh my god, he's so bad. He like does this like cringy kissy thing with both of them, like to say bye in the pods. He just like is so intense to both, and I'm just like, you gotta be lying to someone or everyone if you're this two-faced about this whole thing. Brittany starts getting really tired of it, but he just love bombs her and then makes all these assumptions like, oh, I bet everyone in the real world thinks you're so dumb, but you're so smart to me. Like, you're so smart. And I bet everyone thinks you're so weak because you're so small, but you're so strong they don't even know. And while at the same time he's telling Hannah like, oh, we're twin flames, which that triggered me too because I watched the Escaping Twin Flames docuseries. It's like a weird Zoom cult that exploits people's beliefs in twin flames, but like when they started talking about twin flames, I was like, and then okay, let's get to actually once Hannah and Leo break up. This is like huge, and I was screaming. I had so much fun with this fight. I could not with Leo yelling at Hannah. So Hannah comes in intending to break up with him because she just had like a breakthrough with Nick, said I love you, and then she comes in with Leo ready to tell him, and Leo is pissed that she made a choice. Both Leo and Hannah were torn between two people, and Leo was dragging it on, and Hannah felt ready to make a decision. But then Leo starts questioning her about how it all happened and how if he had seen her first, would she had said I love you to him or agreed to marry him. And Hannah was in no mental capacity to give answers to any of these questions. She was having a mental breakdown. Leo is yelling at her like, you're gonna let the schedule dictate your husband. And oh my god, the part that got me so good, it got me together, was he was like, we're both ENTJs. Like, how could you? What? MBTI in the year of 2024? Give me a break. I was losing my mind at this fight, and it was just hilarious. I mean, it was horrible, and Leo is horrible. It was so funny. Poor Hannah, she held through, and she came out the other end, but oh my god. So they had their fight, and Hannah's just like miserable crying. They come back the next day, and he apologizes for screaming. Just being awful that date. But at the same time, he's like totally backpedaling on everything because he realizes like, oh, Hannah's sold on Nick, and he's trying to say like, oh, Nick is so great for you. And Hannah's like, yeah, I've known that this whole time. And clearly Leo was hurt by this comment and starts saying like, well, I knew Brittany was my one from the very beginning too. Excuse you? You were just yelling at her like 12 hours ago that you're ready to propose to her right now and saying you love her and all this shit. And now he's saying like, oh yeah, I always knew it was Brittany. Like totally backpedaling. And that's why I'm like, this man is dangerous because he cannot keep his story straight. He just says whatever he needs to say in the moment. Hannah's not buying it, luckily. Then Leo has the audacity to also ask her to tell Brittany like, oh hey, mind telling Brittany that like I always knew it was her and that I'm so all in on her, and that this breakup was mutual. Excuse me? There was nothing mutual about how Leo and Hannah ended. He was ready to propose to her. Oh my god, that was so... Like, this man is so two-faced. Oh god, gross. And Hannah's not buying it. She's like, I won't talk to her about it. But she has Brittany's back and tells her. But Brittany's still, I think, thinking about the dollar signs, and so they go into their proposal. They have the most awkward proposal. Brittany knows she's a second choice, and Leo knows that she knows that, and they have this very awkward proposal. She, like, stands up and then sits back down and doesn't know what to do, and then she's like, it doesn't feel real, and she just feels really awkward about it, and she's like, I feel like you just asked me to be your girlfriend. And then he's like, you want to be my girlfriend? But he had already proposed and they were already engaged. And she's like, well, we're engaged. Like, it's just super awkward. They're just not like on any kind of same wavelength about anything. They don't seem like excited about anything that just happened. She was just probably thinking like, okay, I know the tea on the wealth to an extent. Let's just see what he looks like and go from there. And then we get there and it is disastrous. It is so cringe, so awkward. He's of course very pleased because Brittany is very attractive. She looks very great and he's, you know, it is what it is. Of course, he's all over her. And I thought it was so interesting how behind her back, all he talks about is how hot she is, like to interviews, to camera. But in her face, he's just like, you're so beautiful and you're smart and you're kind and all these things. And I'm like, all you can talk about when she's not in the room is how hot she is. He's just so fake. And he's all over her. And they go sit down and he's like, has like a death grip on her. Like, doesn't, it's so, she's like, what have I got myself into? She feels like he's a stranger, which I don't know how more people don't suffer from this on Love is Blind of like, this man is a stranger and now I'm expected to just make out and be in love with this stranger. That's freaky, just without all this mess on top of it. It was the most awkward reveal. He's like trying to do a performative thing with his jacket to like give it to her, but she's not even cold. It's like super awkward and she's saying it's awkward and he's just like, you're so beautiful and all over her and gross. And then he's like, what do you like about me? And she's just like, I know in her head she's just like, don't say money, don't say money, don't say money. She can't come up with one thing she likes about the man. And she hasn't said I love you yet. He keeps saying I love you to her. And then the producers break my heart with just a simple text title card saying this couple was not chosen to continue on Love is Blind. They take their own trip to Miami and break up their engagement a few weeks later. I don't know if people care that much about this couple, but I wanted to see the sugar daddy relationship implode. Like, it imploded anyway. Why can't we just see it? And I don't understand why production wouldn't choose them. Like, they should have chosen them just for the drama alone of him seeing Hannah and causing her distress. I mean, sorry to be heartless here to them as human beings, but are we not making television here? Are we not making entertainment? We need Leo to go stir the pot with Hannah and Nick in Mexico. Literally, the pool party where everyone saw each other in the honeymoons was so boring. Literally no drama happened because there were no love triangles there. It would have been so interesting to just see Brittany like keeping up the act or leaving him if she wasn't feeling it, like being honest or not being honest about it. It just feels like so much drama we missed out on and we were robbed. I feel so cruel and heartless, but like, come on, it's TV. And also there's this thing about like, we only have the budget to take X amount of couples to Mexico. And I'm like, do you though? Netflix keeps raising the price. That's for damn sure. And keeps cracking down on password sharing. That's for damn sure. Like, is this money not going to Love is Blind? You can't afford one more couple just to see? The only reason I could see that they wouldn't choose this couple is that there's no hope for them at the altar, which is oddly noble of Love is Blind producers to like be like, oh, there's no chance of love with this couple. Let's let them go. What? I would just rather maybe like them take as many engaged couples to Mexico as they can, and then maybe between honeymoon and real life, that's where they choose who gets to keep going or not, you know? Like, I just feel like after honeymoons you have more information about like who's interesting, who's gonna make it. You have your confrontations, but you can still like cut people if you're trying to like dwindle down your number. I don't know, it's just like bizarre, and they just had so much screen time that I'm like, I'm invested, and they imploded and no one got to see it. And I don't think we'll see them again because they weren't in any teasers and they broke up their engagement a few weeks after honeymoons, which means the weddings probably happened around when they were breaking up. It just felt like no closure with them, and weird. I feel like this is production punishing us for always saying like, show us all the engaged couples, show us all of them, who cares? Well, this was not the way to do it, producers. I would have rather them take this couple over like Tim and Alex or Monica and Steven, to be honest. There are more boring couples that are not giving me much and I'm not very excited for. I would trade both those couples just for this one couple and to see them implode in Mexico. It's not like every other couple was way more infinitely like interesting. I've seen some people theorize like, oh, Brittany just really wasn't into him and so she didn't want to go to Mexico. Like it was more like the couple's choice, but like no, the producers would have never taken the blame for that. In the title card they say this couple was not chosen. Production wouldn't just blame themselves just to be a martyr. I have to assume it's just because they didn't have much hope for a wedding and production is like just really trying to get weddings. But like, no, this drama's better than a wedding. I'm sorry. That's enough. That's enough. Let's go to our boring couples. So Tim and Alex. Ugh, Tim and Alex are my least favorite couple for sure. They don't really have like an interesting archetype to them aside from maybe they're like the new couple that acts like an old married couple right off the bat. Which I don't know if is an archetype, but that's kind of the vibe they're giving. They have a straightforward pod journey. They talk a lot about their family. He has a really tragic backstory, losing his sisters really young. They're both like kind of like obnoxious in their own ways, in a totally different way than Hannah and Nick. There's actually some early foreshadowing with this couple because early on Tim mentions like this yellow shirt he's wearing and how the girl he was previously dating hated it and he bought it out of spite. And then you have a scene way later in the honeymoons where Alex hates this hat he's trying to buy and he buys it just because she hates it. It reminds me like of a boy in middle school, like showing love by being annoying. And then Alex on her side is very easily annoyed and has a short temper. They're kind of a horrible match. She does allude to having temper issues in the past and he mentions like, I don't roll like that, like I don't argue and I don't fight, and I remove myself from the situation. And then later, after they have their big pool party, they get into a big fight off camera. So we don't get to see the fight, and we see the next morning them unpacking the fight. And it sounded pretty bad. It sounded like she called them names. She put her hand over his mouth. She was just like, I guess, in a meltdown kind of status or just like overstimulated and just wanted to go back to the room and like be alone. And he was feeling shut out and kept like pressing what was wrong. And that made her really mad. And that's what made her like go off on him, I think. So he was intending to break up with her, but then she was pretty apologetic about it and was kind of over the whole thing. He was kind of convinced by her to stay and not break up in that moment. Just go. Like, this is not compatible. They're annoying each other the whole time. He keeps talking about that dog in him. Starting at the reveal, he's already like annoying her to death with that. I think she just seems very used to like this toxic dynamic of like fighting and making up, and some people are just used to that in relationships and he's not, and so they're just like really incompatible. They're really toxic together, I think. When things start going wrong at the honeymoon, I'm just like, just leave. Who cares? This is basically a stranger to you. Like, you dated for what, a week? You've known him a week. In the grand scheme of your life, this is not a large time investment and you won't lose much. It's just dumb to me to keep going when like such fundamental compatibility issues have already happened and there's kind of no going back from that. And this is also supposed to be like a honeymoon period, and if shit's already going down, it's over. This couple, I'm just like, I'm not invested in. I don't think they're going to get together. I don't think they should be together. And I don't want to watch them just like annoy each other constantly. Like, that's not a fun thing to watch. They're probably my least favorite. Sorry to them. I mean, individually, in the pods, they seem fine. Like, I liked them in the pods, but all this annoying shit and temper shit did not come up. Okay, Monica and Steven. This is probably my second least favorite couple. I don't really have an archetype for them, actually. They are kind of my wild card couple. But I don't have much hope for them. Maybe there are like centrist couple. I don't know. Monica had an early foreshadowing moment as well. It hasn't like proven true yet, so it might be foreshadowing, might not. But there's an early part in the pods. She mentions she has crazy chemistry at first in her relationships, and then it fizzles out. And I kind of sense that happening already with Steven towards the end of these episodes. Steven was interesting, not in a good way, but not in a bad way, I guess. He seemed to have done a lot of work on himself, and I appreciate that. He's one of the ones that comes from a military background. It's the DC season, so we're gonna get political. Also an election year, perfect timing. He mentions that he voted for Trump in the 2016 election. It's hard for me to trust someone that comes out the gate talking about that. And he says his reason was because he didn't like Hillary. You'd think she said that it's okay to grab women by the pussy with no consequences. Or you think she said horrible things about minorities and disabled people. Or you think she tried to overthrow the government in a democratic election. I'd understand not liking her if she did any of those things, but she didn't. Someone else did, though. The interesting thing about Steven is that in the next election, he did not vote for Trump. He felt a lot more passionate about that vote. And it's just hard for me because it's like, it doesn't matter how passionate you feel about a vote. The vote is the vote in the end, so whatever. But at least there was growth, and Steven seems very committed to growth and has grown a lot. He's also actively in therapy, which is great to hear, especially from a man with like a military background and like making these election choices. It is what it is. He does also come out the gate saying he did cheat on a previous partner, but they worked it out in therapy, and now he's actively in therapy. So I do appreciate the progress in this man. He's like a very rare type of person in this country, in the US, because the US like political parties system is very polarized right now, and there's few people that I think flow between the two sides. I don't get that personally. I mean, I'm on one extreme myself, but at least he went in that direction and believes in changing your mind. I appreciate how he handled the topic of cheating. I do worry about like, can those tendencies come back with the cheating? Hopefully he's still in therapy, but he's very aware. He's very actively working on it, very upfront about it. He's doing all he can right in the pods, you know? And Monica appreciates all of this and is okay with all of it. So they seem like a good match. They get more interesting once they get to the reveal. Right before the reveal, she mentions she gets the ick very easily and has in the past. And it's not necessarily based on looks, but she just gets that. It checks out with her saying earlier, like, she fizzled out. And I think it's kind of happening with Steven once they get to the honeymoons. In the pods, they do touch on like how he's very chatty. He presents this kind of wholesome vibe, in touch with his emotions and all that, which is good. It's all good stuff from Steven. I just worry if it's genuine all the time. I hope it is. I don't know. He's like very doting on her, very obsessed with her. And she kind of seems annoyed by him sometimes. He's over here like trying to get her slippers, trying to mess with the thermostat and make sure she's comfortable, like all these things. She kind of like jokingly complains about stuff, but then it kind of becomes not a joke. Like when she talks about the acupuncture needles reminding him of his boner, which comparing a boner to a needle is not quite a compliment. In general, I feel like he means well, but like there are parts that I side-eye. Like there was a part in the pods where she was talking about her ethnicity, and he was like, "You're just a mutt girl, aren't you?" And I was like, Jesus Christ, what? Excuse me, sir. But she wasn't offended, so she's fine with it. And then after the pool party, he's like yapping away about it's nice things, like how he's so sure about them and blah, blah, blah. And she's just like, "I love you so much, but you're just talking so much. I can't get a word in." And then she just starts eating chips. And I'm like, girl, well, do you have something to say? Or you just want to eat chips in the quiet, but she just seems annoyed. And I'm like, this isn't gonna last. She has said this is her history. And there's a reason they show us certain lines at the beginning. They have like a bajillion hours of footage. So it's like the lines they show us usually are to support what's gonna happen later. I think she's gonna fizzle out. And for him, he seems really wholesome and doting and obsessed with her. And I wonder if he'll burn out from that as well. I don't think they're gonna make it. They might make it to the altar, but not to saying yes. Like, I don't think so. I don't think so at all. She surprises me in what she likes. At the reveal, I was like, why is he giving her a dirty old shirt? And then she was like, the shirt means so much to me. So I'm like, oh, okay. So maybe I'm just not reading her very well. And him, I'm just like, he could be really cool and wholesome and have grown a lot in his life. Or he could just be like faking it a bit. Like, remember Trevor? He had the whole mastermind plan with the thing. So like, you never know. I'm just not that invested in them, to be honest. Like, it'll be interesting to see how they play out, but like, I don't care emotionally. Okay, so finally, we're at our last couple. And I'm glad because this is my favorite couple. Oh my god. This is Ramses and Marissa. I really like them a lot. And their archetype is they're the future liberals want couple. They're very progressive. They believe in housing and food and healthcare as human rights, which is very controversial in this country. I just appreciate their values just because I align with them. But I liked Ramses and Marissa, and they actually had a love triangle because she was into Bodhi, let's just call him Bodhi, who was also of similar values. I actually really liked both Ramses and Bodhi for Marissa, and it was hard for me to think about that she had to pick just one. Like, they're throuple material, and they even talk about that. Also, the way they approach the experiment feels very grounded, very realistic. Like, they're okay joking about how they're in a love triangle, even though at times they get more vulnerable or insecure about it. Like, I don't know, there was just a groundedness to how they spoke about each other, and there was never any nastiness or like competition. From the cast reveal, I had my eye on Ramses because he was very stylish, and he talked about like male vulnerability and like kind of redefining masculinity for himself. And it just felt like all green flags from him. And I like him and Marissa. For Marissa, I'm a little bit confused how she ended up dating a Trump supporter for 3 years. Being like a liberal person. That's a long time, to be honest. But she does have the military background, so it was likely in her military days. I just try to forget that little not so fun fact about her, because she's like, oh, I would never vote for a rapist, like referring to Trump, but you would date someone who would vote for a rapist? How does that work? Girl, I'm trying to forget about that part. Besides that tidbit, I really love Ramses and Marissa together, and I really liked her and Bodhi. Her and Bodhi kind of had a connection with like nerdy stuff, and not the, you know, high-tech Garrett and Taylor kind, but like the nerdy fandom, fantasy world type of nerd, which I know nothing about. They bond over liking just nerdy things, and they were also both military, but I appreciated that they acknowledged kind of the stereotypes around military people and how that might be like a yellow flag with dating. And I just liked that self-awareness about the stereotype. I really liked Bodhi too. He seemed like a nice guy. I was sad for him not being chosen, and I'm excited that he is in the teaser. I do think they're making it out to be like a bigger deal. They always make the pod squad confrontations like a huge deal in the teaser, but it's just like jokes once you get to it. I don't know, they kind of made it seem like, oh, Marissa's gonna be like flirting with Bodhi. But they already have like a very jokey relationship in the pods, like a really friendly dynamic. So like, I think it's just gonna continue. It might bother Ramses, it might not, and I think they'll get through that if it happens. Oh my god, this is so like, who cares? But like, Ramses and Marissa talk about the Adam Sandler versus Will Ferrell debate, and she says there is a right answer. And I was like, well, if you're gonna say there's a right answer, I have to say it's Will Ferrell. And then she's like, Adam Sandler's the right answer. Girl, you don't even know. You don't even know because, okay, if we're talking funniness, I'll give it to you. Yes, I don't like Will Ferrell that much in his acting, and I don't like his movies that much. I'll give you all that. I grew up more on Adam Sandler movies. But nowadays, Will Ferrell is really cool, and he's like a really cool role model for straight men in Hollywood, or straight men in general, because straight men worship him, or worshipped him for a long time. And nowadays, he like executive produces movies made by women for women. Like if you look at some of his recent movies that he's backed, they are really progressive and really cool, and movies that would not have gotten made otherwise. It's not like his previous movies that people know him for. And he's also been very vocal very recently about trans people and how, like, who cares if people want to be trans, which should not be a controversial statement, but here we are. So Will Ferrell's honestly like fierce, and no, I didn't like him in the Barbie movie, and I don't like him that much like in his characters, but like as a person and celebrity, he's been doing a lot of good. I just appreciate that, and I want to acknowledge that, and I want to take it into account if we're doing Adam Sandler versus Will Ferrell debates. I know they were just talking surface level humor stuff, but like I gotta get the message out that Will Ferrell is fierce and doing the work in Hollywood, just in case the people hadn't heard. So I'm very happy for Ramses and Marissa. I think they looked really good together. Their reveal was great. They have like off the chain physical chemistry. They, I think, mentioned they broke a record with how fast they had sex in the honeymoons. My only concern with them is that they're burning so hot so fast. Like, what if it fizzles out? But otherwise, I'm hopeful. I'm rooting for them. I don't think Bodhi is like this huge threat the teaser's making it out to be. I'm excited just to see more of them. Lots of interesting couples. I love how like there are archetypes, and almost every couple just matches each other's energy. It's either toxic or not toxic, but I like how defined every couple is. Even though I'm beefing with producers about certain large choices this season, I'm enjoying it, and I'm excited about it and excited to see how it plays out. We have a lot of couples. If we include Leo and Brittany, it was 7, I think. It's stacked. I think they're going to start dropping like flies. I'll be here covering the rest of the season. I'll probably do some live streams towards the end. Last season, I tried to build like a time capsule for the season, like just kind of iconic objects that were important, and let me know if you have submissions for the time capsule. I'm thinking at least the duck. I think the duck is the first thing going in the time capsule. We got to start thinking about it now so that we don't forget later once all the shit has gone down. Let me know your thoughts on Love is Blind Season 7 so far. Are you enjoying it? I said some people like really weren't enjoying it and were comparing it to Season 5, dare I say, the worst season. Houston. Sorry to Houston. Ugh. Tragic. I don't think it's that bad, and I think there's just like a lot of well-matched couples. Whether they'll succeed or not, we'll see. Please like this video and subscribe to my channel if you enjoyed. I put out new videos whenever I feel like it about TV, pop culture, internet trends, and other miscellaneous things. And you can follow me at Miscellaneous on Instagram or Twitter to keep up with me, or just turn on the bell notification here on YouTube. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye!